Good morning. We are Facebook Live and Zoom Live. Let me make sure everything's working here and we'll get this party started. Let's see. All right. Perfect. All right. So I'm Instructor Jay with Guardian Training Consulting, and I'm super excited to be offering this free seminar with a segment of our Stop the Bleed class. And we're going to focus today on tourniquets and the use of tourniquets to stop life-threatening bleeding. So our little background on us first is we are a Fountain Hills-based company. So it's primarily my wife and I, Karen, teaching most of the classes. We have hired a instructor on, Instructor C, and what we focus on is safety awareness, refusing to be a victim, and then particularly also stop the bleed. So this is vitally important training because we're not talking about firearms, we're not talking about tactics. What we are talking about is the use of training and tools to stop life-threatening bleeding. What the genesis of a lot of the tourniquets and the medical gear that we use today is really based out of combat. But what that has transcended into is the likelihood of you getting into some type of traumatic incident, be it a car accident, be it a child falling off of a piece of playground, falling from great heights, going out mountain bike riding, and God forbid something happening. To your appendages or your chest cavity or whatever the case may be. So these tools are for absolute life-threatening incidents. The genesis of us doing this was particularly my mom. I went camping with my mom. She has a 35-foot fifth wheel. So Karen and I went camping, brought my kiddo with us, and we were up in an area that didn't have any cell reception. And I'm like, Mom, where's your medical kit? And when she brought it out, guess what kind of medical kit she brought out? That's exactly right. A Boo-Boos and Band-Aids kit. So it had, Dora the Explorer Band-Aids, a couple pieces of gauze, Ace bandage, the alcohol prep pads, a couple of pieces of Tylenol, and some antacids. Nothing that's going to stop life-threatening bleeding. I'm like, Mom, what happens, God forbid, if you or your husband have some type of life-threatening bleeding? What are you going to do? And she scratches her head, thinks for a second, and didn't have an answer. And I said, that's not as an instructor, that's not a good time to start trying to figure stuff out. When we talk about in our medical kits, we have these nice instructions, these IKEA-style instructions on how to apply a tourniquet and do all that stuff. When life is on the line, it's not a good time to lay this flat next to your patient or your loved one and try to read it and try to apply it. Great that they have it, but not a good thing to be trying to go step by step. So that was kind of the genesis for us to do it because it really hit home. Like, Mom, what? God forbid, she travels all around the country. God forbid, what happens if something like that happens? And Karen or I that are trained and also have the tools to do it aren't there. So it scared the bejeeves out of me. So Karen and I have almost 40 years of military and law enforcement experience. And what we wanted to bring was just to make community safer and prepare people. It's not to fear monger, but what people are starting to realize is they can't depend on their first responders to keep them safe at every waking moment. As the old adage goes, is when seconds count, law enforcement and medical professionals are minutes away. And what are you doing in the intermediary to keep yourself safe? And we're not just talking about firearms. We're talking about having the tools and the training to preserve your life or the lives of somebody else. And that's really where Stop the Bleed comes in. So we'll talk about the program real quick. Stop the Bleed program was started, the genesis of it was after the Sandy Hook incident. So military and law enforcement have had, for the most part, robust systems and medical training in place. Even when I was in the military numerous amounts of years ago, you drop the word tourniquet and people would just absolutely flip out. You hear the myths of if you apply a tourniquet, you're going to lose a limb, you're going to have your leg amputated or your arm amputated. Nothing could be further from the truth. What they started through Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom, what specifically IED attacks, was the absolute necessity of having one of these or more than one of these on each soldier, airman, Marine, and sailor. So they started finding the efficacy very high for the use of tourniquets to save lives. So as they developed that, the military and law enforcement started taking hold of that. Well, the citizens, the civilian world that we live in, didn't have a program. There were a multitude of programs out there that were teaching different stuff, from improper application of tourniquets, trying to teach improvised tourniquets by way of belts and stuff like that. There was really no quality control. So the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, the American College of Surgeons, and the Committee on TCCC, which is Tactical Combat Casualty Care, all got together and they developed a program called Stop the Bleed. And it was this campaign that was developed specifically after Sandy Hook, because a majority of the Sandy Hook victims died from preventable bleeds. I'm not going to get into full after action about that. If you want to know more about that, we can have that discussion, but we're going to stick to what we're talking about today. So our Stop the Bleed class is typically anywhere from a 2 to 3 hour class, and it's mixed. So it's first part lecture, which is theory and mostly instructor-led discussion, and then the second part is the actual practical application. So where Guardian kind of has taken the next step with the Stop the Bleed program is we've actually partnered with Tactical Medical Solutions, the people that make the Soft T Gen 4, or the Special Operations Force Tactical Tourniquet, and then also all of the medical kits that we recommend. So Tactical Medical Solutions, the tourniquet, specifically the Soft T Gen 4, is the preferred tourniquet for our Special Operations troops downrange, that they depend their lives on it, as well as professional law enforcement and first responders. So partnering with them, it's been awesome. So we started the Stop the Bleed courses, and then we partnered with Tactical Medical Solutions. So we're one part an associate trainer program. So the associate trainer program is extremely exciting because we're one of only 2 in the state of Arizona, and the only one in the Phoenix Valley. The other one is in Tucson. That is an associate trainer program right here. Sorry, this one right here. I'm trying to do it reverse. So the associate trainer program is awesome. We are a vetted company by way of Tactical Medical Solutions. So whenever we have a Stop the Bleed class or any kind of bleeding control class, we call up Tactical Medical Solutions, and they ship a $4,000 Pelican case to us, filled with all of the medical supplies, from tourniquets to training kits to training combat gauze and everything like that. And then also other styles of moulage and wound packing that we can actually teach our students. So they send that free of charge to us whenever we have a class, and then our students get to tear it apart, rip it up, blow it up, and then we put it all back together. We put the kind of packaged FedEx tag on it, and then we send it back free of charge, which is pretty awesome. Then that's the first part, and the second part is we are a distributor for all of their products, from bleeding control kits to basic bleeding control kits, what we sell here, to tourniquets, to even more advanced applications. So we've actually been reached out by a SWAT team in the Valley. We're going to be providing medical supplies to that SWAT team. So from basic to advanced medical care tools. So our Stop the Bleed class is a little different than a lot of other Stop the Bleed classes. So we do cover, we do cover tourniquets, we do cover pressure dressings, hemostatic gauze, and calling how to properly call 911. And then the one thing that we do add that is typically not in most Stop the Bleed classes is the use of chest seals. So the use of chest seals that, God forbid, if your chest cavity gets compromised by way of impalement or gunshot wound or whatever the case may be, the use of these, because the number one cause of death in trauma is life-threatening bleeding or hemorrhagic bleeding. And then the second leading cause of death that's preventable is tension pneumothorax, or having a compromised chest cavity, which then collapses lungs and causes you to essentially asphyxiate. So you have insanguination or bleeding to death, and then asphyxiation due to tension pneumothorax. So essentially what this course covers, and again, it's a 3-hour course. What the course covers is the leading causes of death due to a traumatic event. So what we're going to specifically talk about. So before I go on, I apologize. Before we go on with that, so the course comprises of approximately about an hour to an hour and a half of lecture, and it's instructor-led discussion, and we talk about all the different types of how to call 911, how to identify life-threatening bleeding, putting pressure on wounds, use of tourniquets, and everything there. And then we break out all of the fun stuff like the training kits, and we actually use all of the training items that are in our training kits to do a practical application, so to learn that. And then after you complete the class, you actually walk away with a certificate that's certified by Guardian Training and Consulting, who are then certified by Stop the Bleed campaign, which again includes Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, American College of Surgeons, as well as the Committee on TCCC. So what we're going to specifically talk about today is just one part of that, and that's the use of the tourniquets. So what I'm going to talk about is 2 different types of tourniquets. The 2 tourniquets that we recommend are from 2 different companies. Now, there are numerous amounts of tourniquets out there, and I'll get to them in a minute. But we're going to be talking about the Soft T Gen 4, okay, made by Tactical Medical Solutions, and the CAT, so the Soft T Gen 4 is a Special Operations Forces Tactical Tourniquet, Special Operations Forces Tactical Tourniquet, and then the North American Rescue CAT, or Combat Application Tourniquet. We'll talk about pros and cons. We'll talk about why they're recommended. So those are the 2 we're going to be talking about today, and then we'll talk about some other tourniquets on the market. So first and foremost, these 2 tourniquets are approved by the Committee on TCCC, or the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care. So again, there are other tourniquets out there that are good, and then there's a couple tourniquets that are not. So what I always recommend is use what the professionals use, and these are what the professionals use. Are there the SWAT T, which is the rubberized band? Yeah. Is it good in a pinch? Is it better? Is any kind of tourniquet system, whether it's a belt or whatever the case may be, is it good enough? Yes, but why go with good enough when you can go with the best, and you can go with something that will, if your life is dependent upon it, why wouldn't you want to have the best? So the SWAT T, the pro is it's very flat, which is that rubberized vulcanized rubber. It's very flat. It can fit in the back of your pocket very easily. But once you apply it and you start having blood, it's going to be slipping. Then your RATS, for example, the Rapid Application Tourniquet System, has a ton of controversy into it. I'm not here to badmouth the RATS, but it is not a TCCC approved tourniquet. Even though they say they're TCCC on there, on the RATS tourniquet, it is not approved by the committee. They actually created their own LLC called TCCC Approved, and they've slapped it on their tourniquet with the purpose of honestly deceiving people, thinking that the committee actually approved it, and nothing could be further from the truth. So what the 2 tourniquets we're talking about here, specifically the Soft T and the CAT, are a non-pneumatic windlass type tourniquets. So, i.e. non-pneumatic, it does not use air pressure, it doesn't use hydraulic pressure, it literally just uses pressure of the strap itself to start the tightness, and then the part that is right here, this like, for example, this is an aircraft grade aluminum, the shaft here, and then the shaft here, which is polymer, is called the windlass. This is called the windlass. So we're going to talk a little etymology here on the, or nomenclature on the tourniquet. So for our Soft T, you're going to have your windlass, you're going to have your band that actually goes around the leg or the appendage. As you apply the tourniquet and it gets tight, Then you have what we call the track system, or the tourniquet retention assist clip. So that's where the windlass actually interfaces with here. And then you have the tri-ring that actually creates a redundant, this is the retention system. So for example, a lot of people say is, well, I'll just use my belt. Well, belts are made for waists, not for legs or arms. So once you cinch that belt on to an arm or a leg, you have no holes on your belt to retain pressure on that. And the minute that tourniquet releases pressure, the bleeding will start. So will resume. So what these are for, again, is life-threatening bleeding. So it's not for boo-boos and Band-Aids. We're talking large arterial spray bleeding. So when we ask our students, how long does it take for somebody to pass out? So if you're alone, for example, you're walking and all of a sudden you have some type of traumatic event, be it falling or being impaled by an object, whatever the case may be, hiking, biking, camping, hunting, or just your average life, you have approximately a minute and a half before you pass out. So a minute and a half of arterial spray before you pass out. And then after about 3 minutes, you exsanguinate and die. So these are, again, femoral artery, which is the large artery in your leg, if that gets struck, or for example, like a radial artery. So that's what we're going to talk about. You have approximately a minute and a half before you pass out and 3 minutes before you actually die. But to understand that if you're alone, you have a minute and a half to self-apply some type of tourniquet before you pass out, because after that minute and a half, affecting self-rescue is completely impossible because you will be unconscious. So what we're going to talk about is actually applying these tourniquets. And what the tourniquet is designed for is appendages, so your arms and your legs. When we get into junctional hemorrhages such as above your scapula, into your armpit, or into your groin area, that's when we actually use hemostatic gauze or your quick clot, which we're not going to discuss in this seminar. All we're going to be talking about is tourniquets. So obviously you do not apply a tourniquet. It goes without saying, but for my military folks, it goes without saying, do not apply a tourniquet around your neck. Don't do that. I know that it sounds silly, but sometimes you just have to say it. So arms and legs. So what these tourniquets are designed for is to apply that pressure and to essentially cut off circulation to the arm or the leg to prevent that bleeding from continuing. So there will be a profuse amount of blood. For our Stop the Bleed class, the first one we actually show is a Las Vegas Metro officer, two officers chasing a suspect in a stolen vehicle, got shot at, and they actually suspect goes around and starts shooting at our officer. Officers engage him, and then he actually gets shot multiple times to include the leg, and there's a large amount of blood due to a femoral artery strike. They pull out a combat application tourniquet, a CAT, and apply it and save this gentleman's life. So again, these are absolute life-saving tools. So we're going to talk first about the differences between the combat application tourniquet and the soft T, the pros and cons. So one of the most, I guess, prolific tourniquets on the market is probably your CAT, or your combat application tourniquet sold by North American Rescue. Now, we are distributors for North American Rescue as well, but I'm going to explain to you the pros and cons of this tourniquet and as well as this. So the combat application tourniquet is an extremely easy tourniquet to apply. So you can see the red end here, the red tip end comes out of your buckle, and now you have a large strip of nylon. It's made out of nylon and polymer. So the strap is nylon, and then your windlass as well as the retention clip is polymer as well as the buckle. So it's extremely easy to put on. It's extremely easy to apply and keep that way. So how you stage it, you essentially take your red end, you slip it through the buckle, and then you try to keep it as large as possible. So you can see here that you have the red end here, and then you have the buckle. So it's a large loop. You want to keep it and stage it in that large loop configuration, because the last thing that you want to do is start out with your tourniquet trying to apply it to a leg, and it's this big. Okay, so you always stage your tourniquets as large as possible, because then you can always cinch them. Okay, so we we stage the tourniquet just like this, fold that over with your Velcro, and then you can actually flat fold your cat. And then now you have a flat folded cat. All right, so you have to apply it. All you do is whip it, and it comes straight out. You have a leg, okay? Let's just assume that this is a leg. The reason why this looks like a heart is because I want you to imagine this is towards my feet down here, and this is towards my heart. You always apply a tourniquet, and it goes without saying, above, you want to apply a tourniquet above the wound. So there's always this debate in this world we live in, is do you apply it a couple inches, 3 to 4 inches higher than the wound, or what we call high and tight, almost to your groin area. What I recommend is high and tight, because if you think about it, if I apply my tourniquet, let's just say I apply my tourniquet about 3 to 4 inches, above. So above my wound, let's just say the tourniquet's right here, and it's 3 to 4 inches above my wound. If there's another wound that happens above that tourniquet, then you either have to take this tourniquet off, which is not recommended, or have another tourniquet and apply it above. Because again, you always have to have your tourniquet above because this will, if you get a strike right here, whether it's a gunshot or whether it's another wound, you fall down, this will start bleeding, and this will actually be stopped. So as I always recommend, again, if you have limited tourniquets, you want to apply it high and tight, okay? High and tight, into the groin or onto up towards the armpit of the arm. So you wrap it, and then you take the excess, and you just literally tuck it into the retention clip there. Okay. Then once it's folded down, then you start applying the windlass. You start spinning this windlass over and over and over again. And then once it's tight, once you feel it's tight enough, then you take this windlass and place it into there. And then a good measure. So once we have it applied here and it's good to go, you take this white part, which is your retention band, and then you place it over top of the 2 retention clips. So literally just place it right over top of the retention clips. And then if you have, for our medical kits, one part of our medical kits includes a full-size Sharpie. So then a great thing to apply on that is the time of the tourniquet, or what we call TOT. So then you apply the time on that, so that when they get to medical help, they know how long the tourniquet's been on. Okay, understand that they are extremely painful. One, you've already had some type of traumatic event, which is extremely painful. But then once you apply the tourniquet, yes, the patient will scream. But how you know the tourniquet is tight enough is the bleeding stops. Okay, you start cranking and cranking, and then once you feel that you think it's tight enough, you probably want to crank a little bit more. Okay, and then retain it. Now this person, yes, it will be painful, but now this person is ambulatory. That's a big aspect to it. Can they walk on a leg has like a small injury wound like that? Absolutely. Is it going to be painful? Yes. But the whole purpose is we need to get them to help. So once we've identified the life-threatening bleeding, then we apply the tourniquet, and then we want to get 911 on the phone. A lot of people want to start calling 911 and then apply the tourniquet. No, apply the tourniquet, try to stabilize the patient, then call 911, and then if you can get to safety, get to safety. But you can now make this person ambulatory, because before, you only have about a minute and a half before they pass out and 3 minutes before they die. So a big part of this, a lot of questions I get asked about tourniquets is, how long can you keep a tourniquet on before they potentially lose an arm or a leg? Well, studies have shown now upwards of 8 hours without ever loosening it, because the minute we apply a tourniquet, we never loosen it. The only people that take tourniquets off in a traumatic event is when you're at professional help, such as a doctor or a surgeon. So the big misnomer is you have about 8 hours. And people are like, well, I've been told by military folks, law enforcement officers, that if you apply a tourniquet, you're probably going to lose your arm or leg. Now, again, when I was in the military, You mentioned, you dropped the T word called tourniquet, and people would flip out. But understand, surgeons have been using tourniquets for decades. So if you go into surgery, you know, an orthopedic surgeon, and you're going to get your leg or arm worked on, the first thing they do to control the bleeding is apply a tourniquet. So if these doctors can apply a pneumatic tourniquet and you're not going to lose your leg, the same thing goes with non-pneumatics. Okay, so once you have the tourniquet, you put the time on. If you can't write it on here, write it on their forehead, and then get them to safety. So now, a great way if you're training, the great way to see if the tourniquet is tight enough is just to take your pulse. If it's on your arm, just a good pulse on your off of your wrist, or you take a pulse on your, if you applied it to your leg, down by your feet. You can actually take a distal pulse down on your foot. If you don't feel a pulse, then your tourniquet is tight enough and it's stopping the flow of bleeding. Okay, so that's how you apply the CAT or the combat application tourniquet. Okay, so that would be on that. So the pros of the CAT, really quick before we get into the Soft T Gen 4. The pros of the CAT is it's extremely easy to work. It's very lightweight. It folds decently flat. The only kind of problem is the plastic retention clips, which kind of give it some bulk. The biggest, I guess, pet peeve that I always see with people transporting these is do not put your retention strap over the top and store it like this. Because if you have to deploy this, what do you think you next have to do? You have to take the retention strap and then do that. So again, when you're storing it, make sure the retention strap is on the typically the left or the right side, wherever that is. The cons is this is the #1 most faked and counterfeited tourniquet on the market. So if you're buying tourniquets on Amazon or any kind of medical gear, don't do it. I can't stress that enough. There are Chinese fakes of this tourniquet that are just pervasive in nature. There have actually been military contractors and some units in the military who have actually bought fake CAT tourniquets. And what happens typically, the failure point of these fake tourniquets is the windlass. So this person, you or another person, is literally depending their lives on this tool, and then as you apply it and you start spinning that windlass, it actually snaps. And then next thing you know, that's a really bad day. So again, it's a #1 faked tourniquet. If you're going to buy a CAT tourniquet, buy it from a reputable dealer, such as Guardian. We have a contract with North American Rescue to get you these tourniquets, and we can take care of that. Don't buy it on Amazon. The other good part is you can these can go through metal detectors. I'm not suggesting trying to sneak stuff in, but understand that some events may say you can't take a tourniquet in because it's a weapon. You can stuff these in your boot. You can stuff these in a bag, and they go through metal detectors. But again, it's super lightweight. It's easy to use. The only other con is the fact that if you have to and you see this in the Las Vegas video, if you have to undo this because you can't get there around their leg and you have to undo this, understand you're trying to fit this red slot into this very tiny hole and then applying it. So it's a very fine motor skill, and the only way that you really can overcome that is through training. So these are about $27, $28 for that. They don't expire. But again, I probably wouldn't recommend leaving a CAT in your trunk in Arizona due to the fiberglass nature of this. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is the TAC Medical Solutions Soft T Gen 4. Honestly, Guardian recommends this tourniquet over any other tourniquet simply because you have extremely thick strap, nylon strip. Okay, you have an aircraft grade aluminum windlass. So if this windlass is hot, say it's in a trunk or anything like that, it's not going to bend or deform. Okay, as well as the buckle, for example, the buckle here. So if I have to undo this, say I have to undo it just like I did with the CAT tourniquet, I can't just loop it around. The great thing is you have this aircraft grade aluminum buckle. You literally just unsnap it. You then apply it. You then apply it, and then you take this large loop and this large buckle and just literally like a seatbelt, just snap it. Okay. So we're gonna take our leg again. Okay, we're gonna take our leg again. Let's just say we have to unsnap it. So we come upon the patient, whatever the case may be. I can't just loop it around. I'm literally going to unsnap the buckle. I'm going to take the tourniquet. I'm going to re-snap the buckle, and then I'm going to apply it. And I'm going to go high and tight, high and tight. Okay, so I'm going to turn it around for demonstration purposes, high and tight. So now that we have it cinched down and we're good to go there, all right, so now we're going to start spinning our windlass, just like the cat tourniquet. Start spinning the windlass, and then keep going. And then once you feel it's tight and you can't go anymore, go a little more, and then take your windlass and put it inside the tourniquet retention assist clip. Now, the cool thing about what I like about the Soft-T Gen 4 is it doesn't just have one retention aspect. It actually has two. It's redundant in nature. So you have the tourniquet, this track system right here, the tourniquet retention assist clip, and then you take your tri-ring and then you place it over top. You place it over top. So you have it in the track system here, and then you place it over top of the windlass. It's kind of hard to do it with one hand here. There we go. So now you have two retention systems in place. So it's extremely solid. Then you take your tail. The tail can just sit here, or you can wrap it around, whatever the case may be. And then your tail has the place here where you can actually mark tourniquet time. You just take your pen and mark it. So it's extremely well made, extremely tight. You can apply this very tightly. And again, the double retention system is really what I like about this. It's just a lot better, in my opinion. It's a lot better tourniquet system. So you're all set. You have your tourniquet set. Then you apply the name. Okay. A great thing to have in your medical kit is a set of trauma shears. Okay. These are vital tools simply because the first thing you want to do is to be able to identify where the bleeding is coming from. And if you're wearing clothing, whether it's light colored clothing or dark colored clothing, what that blood is going to do, it's actually going to perfuse into the clothing, and you will not be able to find the origin of the blood. So, if you think you're going to rip the shirt off like WWF style, nothing could be further from the truth. Bandage scissors, those little bandage scissors, will not cut clothing off. These are serrated, which are designed to cut clothing. The first thing you want to do is remove the clothing of the person so that you can find the bleed. So a good set of trauma shears is great. So that's your Soft-T Gen 4. Okay. Now, what we actually recommend is not just having a tourniquet, because there are other wounds that may require something else. That's why we recommend getting a complete bleeding control kit. So I'm going to go through the bleeding control kit really quick because, again, these are vital tools. Again, my mom ordered 2 of these right at the outset when she was going to the Everglades. So the one we do sell is all of the items in here, which is called our Texas Bleed Kit. So it includes everything in here, and then it goes into an evidence grade Ziploc bag. It's less than $90 to get all the materials here. A lot of people try to build their own. Okay, that's great, but you will start to realize as you start building your own, it's actually more expensive, simply because what they want you to do is to make sure you have everything. So this is a Tactical Medical Solutions bleeding control kit. What I like about these versus like the North American Rescue ones, which the real ones are red, is the fact that it has a sleeve at the bottom to keep your tourniquet outside of the kit. So you don't have to go into the kit and dig for a tourniquet. It's literally on the outside, and just pull that out and you're ready to go. So they said we sell it in the Ziploc bag, and then for another $30 you get for under $120 you get the whole kit with the Ziploc bag, the evidence grade Ziploc bag, and everything like that. So you take everything out of the Ziploc bag and then you place it in here. Now you want to keep that Ziploc bag, for example, like my mom going to the Everglades. first thing she did was take everything out, put it in here, organize it, because the whole purpose of this is to organize everything, and we'll go through it real quick. Then you take this, for example, if she's going to go on a fan boat, put this in the Ziploc bag, seal it up, and now you have an not a airtight, but a watertight sealant. So if it falls off the fan boat, one, it will float. Two, it will make sure that all of your stuff is kept safe from the water. So when you open it up, the first thing that falls out is your, if you organize it properly, is your instructions, the IKEA style instructions. And then as you start opening it up, you'll see that everything's kind of organized. So what's great about this kit is once you unzip it, it literally fans out and you have everything that you need here. So the first thing that it comes with is a set of nitrile gloves. So this is vitally important. If you're working on somebody that you know, so be it. But in law enforcement that I've worked in numerous amounts of years, the first thing that I do when I encounter any kind of bodily substance is I want to glove up. PPE is so important. You don't, again, it's no disrespect, but you don't know what these people have. Any kind of bloodborne pathogens, whether it be AIDS, HIV, hepatitis A, B, or C, and a myriad of different other things. So make sure you glove up. Comes with a set of, I think, XL nitrile gloves. It comes with one hemostatic gauze. There's a multitude of different companies out there. I trust Quick Clot. So this is impregnated gauze that is literally meant to pack a wound. And what this does is it's actually a clotting agent that's impregnated in the gauze. The cool thing is once you start packing that wound, the Quick Clot exits out of the bandage and starts getting into the wound to start clotting that bleeding. So good right up here. Okay. Then once you get into the top, you have your trauma shears for cutting clothing off. This is a trauma bandage from Tourniquets. So if I pull out something like this would be your pressure bandage. Okay, something similar to this. Okay, so what this is designed for is literally just to wrap, use a pressure dressing to wrap. And again, it does not have to be really pretty, but what it does is it creates that pressure on the wound. Okay, so there's your pressure dressing. So once you pack the wound, go from there, then you put the pressure dressing on. Okay, then the next part, probably the couple things that most medical kits don't include are these. It is the space or mylar blanket. So understand that when you start bleeding, there's two things that are actually occurring. You actually go hypotensive, which means your blood pressure actually drops, and then you actually go hypothermic. Because understand that your blood is essentially your cooling system as well as your heating system. So again, the red stuff is coming out now, so your blood pressure drops just like a hose. If you have a good stream of a hose and then behind you somebody pokes a hole in it and then pokes a hole in your hose, the water pressure at the spout is going to be lower because all the water pressure is lost before you get to the spout. So that's the hypotensive aspect, and then the hypothermic. So when that happens, what actually your body does is it starts shutting down, and you go into what they call hemorrhagic shock. So what this does is the space mylar blankets reflect over 97% of sunlight, UV light, as well as radiant heat your body. So what this does is it keeps the heat on you, and then it keeps you warm. So one of the more underrated aspects to it, but again, you need to have that there. The next part that is typically missing, again, you come with a full-size Sharpie, that is typically missing is your chest seals. So most of your bleeding kits actually do work on bleeding, but as we said before, the number one cause of death in a traumatic injury is bleeding, and the second is tension pneumothorax. That's why we recommend having some type of occlusive dressing. So there's a couple companies out there. There's Beacon, Hyphen, Halo, and Russell. Those are the four big companies when it comes to chest seals that will actually save your life. So what these are designed for is to apply to your chest cavity. Say you have an impalement, sucking chest wound. What this does is it covers up the chest wound so that then it reinflates your lung, and then you go from there. Vital important. So again, it includes all of that to include the tourniquet and the carrying case. It is MOLLE. It does have MOLLE for my people that are super tactical. I put these also on any of my packs. If I go mountain biking, if I go hiking, I always have at least one for the trip. So that's the medical kit. And that's kind of how you apply the tourniquets. If there's any questions, if you have any concerns about your safety, please contact us. Our phones, sadly, unfortunately, have been off the hook due to the recent events. We're not here to fearmonger. We're not here to make people scared. But really, you have to understand that you are your own guardian. As we say, that first kind of thing is you are your own guardian. And as our ethos goes, is what are you doing today to prepare for tomorrow? Because what are you doing today to prepare for that possible uncertain tomorrow? Whether it's bleeding control, firearms, home security, not just from a home defense, i.e. gun perspective, but how to make your house a harder target for any kind of criminal activity, as well as being aware and safe in the environments you walk around, going to the grocery store, movie theater, and all those other things. Hopefully those will open soon. But the big part is we just want to keep you safe and want to give you the tools and the training to keep you safe. That's really what it's about. If you have any questions, visit our website, www.gtctrain.org. Contact me, Jay at gtctrain.org, or Karen at gtctrain.org. We're really pleased to resume classes. We have a concealed carry class coming up June 28th at Haley Strategic Partners, where we actually go over the laws of self-defense, and then also shooting on a $1.5 million simulator. And then June 27th and July 18th, we actually have a pistol fundamentals class, as well as a judgmental use of force, where we actually do 4-hour class, only 5 students, 2 instructors. There's no ammunition consumption because it's all in the $1.5 million virtual simulator. So the instructor-student ratio is kept low for a reason. So from 8 a.m. to noon, it's only 5 students. And from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., it's only 5 students. So 10 students per day. So we want to keep it intimate. So we're going to do about an hour and a half to 2 hours of pistol fundamentals on the Vertra. That's ballistically accurate out to 2,000 yards, which will then end in typically like a plate rack competition. Keep everything fun and loose. And then we're going to go into the scenarios where we actually go into the 300-degree Vertra that completely surrounds you, and we'll put up scenarios ranging from assaults to aggravated assaults, robberies, all the way up to multi-shooter, active shooter scenarios. And then we actually put a surprise. You actually put a shock pack on if you wish to do that. And that's really the only way that we've seen that successfully we can get that body alarm response, or we call it sympathetic body alarm response, to really see how you're going to do in a situation like that. So join us. We'd love to see you in a class coming up. If you don't have any questions, comments, or concerns, thank you so much for joining me. We're really excited to be offering that. And then stay tuned for upcoming classes. Have a great day, folks. Thank you.